Hey everyone, welcome to the third episode about Better Call Saul for seasoned veterans.
Woo!
It's been pretty crazy, I gotta admit. I'm surprised how the third season ended. We're obviously going to get into that in a few minutes, but first off, I am Bobby.
And I am Nicole.
And we were 3 seasons into Better Call Saul, and as I said in the last one too, I'm surprised how much things have picked up in the series. Because the first 2 seasons seemed very, base setting. Like they had to set up all the characters. They had to give you a little bit of what they were like. They had to make sure you understood where their allegiances were. And now season 3, it's like, now where does all that tie in when shit gets crazy? And I've really liked it so far. The court battle, oh man.
This was a really wild ride this season. And I think it had some really big openers and enders, both for the seasons and individual episodes, which we'll get into.
It also established when the events of Better Call Saul are taking place, 2002, 2003, which makes sense with the cell phones. I've been enjoying that, where it's like, look at these old Nokia flip phones that they're using to call people. I've noticed that change in, well, not just TV shows, but in movies too, where so many problems were like, so-and-so is walking into a trap, how do I warn them? It's like, now we got cell phones, just fucking call them or send them a text or message them on Facebook or Instagram them. Like, whatever you got to do, it's so much easier to get a hold of people. But this is at a time where, they drive out to the desert where there's no service. So nobody knows where they are. You can't do that anymore. We lose service at your sister's place, and even then, it still comes back. So
you still get your text. It's just shitty to call.
It's crazy that's where the time period's taking place, and I'm glad that they're like, yeah, it's 2002. At the end of it, it's into 2003. So we know where this is in reference to Breaking Bad and in reference to everyone's relationships down the line. Mike's still an older guy, but he's not where we saw him in Breaking Bad.
It's not as hardened.
Yeah, and also, actually, to that point too, a lot of characters don't seem to be like that. Jimmy, Saul's a lot more no-nonsense, cutthroat than Jimmy is. Jimmy still has that moral compass guiding him. And also, Gus.
We actually see Gus this season.
Yeah, it is season 3 he shows up in.
So
I had to fact check that. Got to correct it, Nicole.
Quick pause. We realized that one night we were binge watching a couple episodes about mid-season, season 2, and we both fell asleep. And at one point, I woke up and saw the scene where we get reintroduced to Gus, and then fell back asleep. And at another point, Bobby woke up and saw the trap scene with Jimmy breaking into Howard's apartment. You were like, I don't know what's I remember you waking up the next morning being like, I don't know what I saw, but all I saw was Howard being like, yep, I'm a witness, I'll testify, and we knew some shit was gonna go down. So that was a mistake from the last episode on a part of falling asleep.
Yeah, which will happen, especially when you watch TV shows with Nicole.
That's my classic move.
A little bit of a sleepy person.
And I work long hours, so when we're trying to squeeze a few episodes in after a long day, it's inevitable.
Oh, yeah. We also firmly established where Saul/Jimmy is now. He is going by Gene Takovic and works at a Cinnabon in Omaha, Nebraska. That is the official rundown of where he is. And we get some more development on that, too, very beginning of the season, when he helps the police find that guy who I believe was shoplifting. And he's hiding he's hiding in the photo booth. And he doesn't say anything, but he also knows, if I don't answer this cop, he's going to be a bit of a dick to me about it. And that's...
Wonder why I'm not willing to help.
Well, that's prying eyes, he's been trying to avoid in the last few ones. But then, at the last second, has,
Get a lawyer!
Yeah, don't say a damn thing! Get a lawyer! That classic, almost, and I've never considered this, but for you, for example, as a baker, if you saw somebody about to finish something without I don't know, yeast or baking soda, whatever it may be, you'd be like, hey, you need to do this, right? So I guess that would be his equivalent of don't say shit even though you just got busted with actual stolen items.
See someone's about to fuck up, you have to give them your professional advice.
Yeah, and even now when he's a Cinnabon manager working with a bunch of preteens and shit and hating life, he still has that lawyer instinct of, this guy's going down. I've been in that position of, what we're seeing a lot more of too is the relatable criminal where it's not like I want to do this so I can make a ton of fucking money and kill people. Like the only person who's really like that is Tuco, and he's in jail right now. Like we see that like Nacho has things that drive him. We see Hector has things that drive him. Gus is the same way. Bolsa, that like third tier henchman that's like on the same level as Hector and Gus, but like we don't see a lot of in Better Call Saul. We see in flashbacks in Breaking Bad though, so I don't think he's gonna make it out alive from this series.
I feel like a lot of people are not surviving Better Call Saul besides the ones that it's a reintroduction to. I think that's one of the cool things about this series is like, are all of these characters that we're starting to love that aren't just a teaser from Breaking Bad going to die?
Yeah, where do they
or
fall?
At least, abandon Jimmy/Saul for good.
Yeah, or maybe Jimmy abandons them when he transitions into Saul Goodman full time. Also, season 3, I know you and I have talked about this a little bit when it happened, but I would consider this the season where Saul Goodman is born. It is the mix between Jimmy McGill and the newly formed Saul Goodman, where he's a businessman, he has morals, but also when he's getting screwed, he'll screw you right back. And that is what Saul Goodman is. And I know we've heard the name before, but now he's operating a business as
and
Saul
he's
Goodman.
Using that name for himself. He
Exactly.
has this image. Although we do see the classic Saul Goodman suits in season 2, but I don't think he's embodied the Saul Goodman persona at that point.
I also think it's really funny, and maybe I'm just looking at this as a bit of a Star Wars fan, but his outfit on set for doing the advertisements looks exactly like George Lucas's outfit on like for episodes 6 and 7.
Love it.
Like, yeah, it blows my mind. Or sorry, not 6 and 7, 4 and 5.
Numbers.
Yeah, the ones that he was a part of and didn't screw up, but that's a whole different story we'll get into in a different podcast.
Perhaps.
But season 3, big developments, the birth of Saul Goodman. That's what
introduction to Gus.
Yeah. Oh man, and Gus, the scenes where we see him rolling up in like slick black Italian suits. That's not the Gus we know.
No, and I read an interesting quote from the actor who plays Gus. I don't want to fuck up his name, so I'm not even gonna.
Come on, you gotta attempt it.
Giancarlo Esposito. I'm also super sick, if you guys haven't noticed yet, so I apologize if I sound weird. But I saw that he wanted to play Gus differently than he did in Breaking Bad, because he's not the same Gus. He hasn't gone through, we're exploring what created that hardened, rigid person we've seen. So he's a little fresher. He's a little, different. And I like it. And I think that must have been a really refreshing experience as an actor, but it's also really refreshing as a viewer to get to see that, he has a birthing story as well. Like as much as Saul Goodman is being crafted and created, so is the Gus we know.
And I would say this is like the Gustavo Fring golden years. Like, this is when things are moving real well, like the business is booming. He's got his own little, like, he's transporting stuff for their cartel. He's making money off of it. He's very happy working his humble job as perhaps the dopest employer I've ever heard of.
Literally 24 hours of overtime? Are you kidding me?
I love that. And you just, like, go home, like, you're going to get paid for your shifts. Like, he knows that, like, damage control is a big part of his job. And he does it so well. And that's where, like, I've been asking you this as the series go on, but the courier that Mike follows throughout this season, we're going to talk about that in a bit too, but that guy, is that not the guy that Gus kills with the box cutter in Breaking Bad? Like, if that is, that would just, like, lay ground for such, like, that makes that death even more impactful, where, like, I will slit the throat of somebody I've worked with for a decade. What do you think I'll do to you if you fuck with me again? And, like, we're if that's the same guy, we're seeing that, and like I haven't gone back to the series and double checked that, but the guy seems like he's a familiar character, and like in a series full of familiar characters, you always got to question if it's a new guy or if it's somebody they're reintroducing. But I think that's what they're slowly setting the base for, is Gus becomes that guy in a large part because Hector keeps fucking with him, and that Hector will do that. Hector will go to that level where he will walk into your front and tell your employees to go fuck themselves while he smokes a cigar and is like, "Where's Gustavo?" Like, Dude, you couldn't sound more cartel if you tried.
And more unprofessional. It's like, for Hector, he doesn't care. You know, Gus is all about the business. Let's keep things professional and you know, on the up and up so the business can boom. And Hector is like, I need the power. I need to be the one who's feeling so macho and on top. And it ends up being his undoing. He walks right into Gus's plan and thinks that he's doing it because he wants him to. Like, Gus from the get-go wants Hector to have to use his trucks to run the drugs because then he can control how much he has to bring in and sell. So Gus is always going to be making more money and bringing in more money and looking like the better guy.
Yeah, it's a really well thought out plan, and that happens with a lot of characters this season. But the ultimate plan going wrong, I think, has to go to Chuck and his whole attempt to get Jimmy completely disbarred from practicing law. And in the end, well, at the end of the season, really screws himself. But as the season goes on, where he just becomes so fixated on catching Jimmy right from the get-go with the tape, where the season picks up and he's like, it's them in the room right after Jimmy has confessed to tampering with the Mesa Verde documents, and Jimmy's like, let me help you tear down all this space blankety shit because, you know, I gotta help out a brother here, and tries to like connect with him on that emotional level with that book that he's like, oh, Mom and Dad used to read this to me, and Chuck's like hurt. He's like, I read that to you.
Yeah. Like,
that's how close we were. And I think Jimmy knew that and wanted Chuck to have that emotional trigger of, no, it wasn't our parents, it was me who did that for you. And
I used to take care of you, and now you're taking care of me.
But that didn't land because Chuck's a fucking asshole.
They do have that really nice moment for like 30 seconds, and then Chuck is just immediately, you know, I will get you.
There will be consequences for this, Jimmy, regardless of us being brothers. Like, dude, you sound like you're in court right now, and we're in your crazy space blanket-filled living room. Like, you have no authority here. You're scary. Like, it's not where he sees himself as that like powerhouse lawyer in the court checkmating people on the stand, and it's like, dude, you're afraid of electricity and you're screwing up basic paperwork. Like, you need to reevaluate where you are right now.
Take a step back. That was such a heartbreaking scene, and I feel like Chuck's plan is successful to a certain extent.
2/3 of the way there. Absolutely.
Yeah, he is killing it on the planning until he's not. Because, Jimmy walks right into that trap. Kim calls, wait for Chuck to make the first move. He's got a plan. He's setting something up, and it's not something to do with the law.
Well, the first move is him. I think he purposely, when he asked Ernesto to put the batteries in the tape player, wanted Ernesto to hear the tape.
Oh, that was a very obvious setup.
But so that, because he knew, like obviously that's the plan, but like he knew Ernesto as the type of person he was, wouldn't tell Jimmy, but it would get back to Jimmy.
Yeah.
And since he was the only one who knew, he would be able to use that to basically convict Ernesto and get him fired for telling Kim, and then Kim tells that to Jimmy.
I wrote down early in the season, is Chuck actually just that set on justice and the law and, as lawyers we have to uphold the law? Or does he just hate and resent Jimmy? But I feel like by the end of the season you realize that it's all about this resentment for Jimmy. Like, he uses his view on the law as a way to undermine Jimmy.
Well, and to me, this whole thing is the equivalent of like siblings, like one sibling tripping another down the stairs or something like that. Like, like a really shitty thing to do to your siblings. You're not trying to hurt them maliciously. You're just like, fuck you, I'm tired of dealing with your shit. I don't have siblings that I was living with. I don't really know any of this stuff. But like, I've seen it as like the friend of a person with siblings. But taken to the court of law level, where they're adults with, like, they can wield actual charges against each other and do that stuff. And it's like, do you guys not see this is the equivalent of two brothers, like, slap fighting each other? Like, it's not, you're not for all this touting of the law, you're not doing the law any good by using it this way. This is really stupid.
Like, as Kim uses in his defense, Jimmy goes to Chuck, the most hurt and betrayed he's ever felt by his brother, his hero, and someone he's cared for the last year or more. And Chuck, it just, it's another trap. It's another betrayal. Like, that's That's so fucked up. After watching that scene, I actually texted my sister and told her how much I loved her and that I would do anything for her because I was just so emotionally distraught by it. I was like, how could you do that to your own brother?
The scene where Jimmy confronts Chuck about the tape?
Yeah.
Do you mean? Yeah, and he breaks it. See, and even that was an orchestrated thing too, where like the second he had PIs in the house 24/7, like you're entrapping your brother in this.
Literally.
Like, I understand the stakes aren't as high, but like you're telling somebody that something that could hurt them is locked away in this room and they can't have it. Like, what, and you know, what other instance would you not want to do? You get that, you know, like you're baiting them into it, and then that was ended up being the scene that I woke up and saw was Jimmy confronting Chuck in his office his little office space area, and the PI and Howard being there as witnesses. So that was quite the development. But like even then, it made me realize, I wonder if him changing the locks was built up to that as well. You know, like that way, not only could Jimmy not get in, but he could use, I didn't want him in my house. I changed the locks to make that happen as a defense, which we saw in the case. I feel
like that was a setup early on. There was something earlier where Ernesto calls Jimmy or tells Jimmy something. Like this, there's the scene in the hospital where he says, you know, I called Jimmy. But there was something else before that where Ernesto tells Jimmy something, and I think Chuck realizes how close they are.
It's when Chuck has like that really bad sick day, and he's like, wrap him in a space blanket, make him some soup, and then it's the day where he goes and tampers with the documents.
Right.
That's Ernesto actually calls him and is like, this is bad. And even Jimmy's like, no, it's not as bad as you think it is. Like, he'll come out of it. He always does. Here's what you need to do. Because that's how much he takes care of Chuck.
Yeah.
Even when they hate each other.
Because that's what you're supposed to do for a sibling that you love.
And then, Chuck offers that fake, like peace agreement sort of with the diversion program.
Yeah.
Where the DDP or whatever it's called, the Diamond Dallas Page, where he has to confess to all the charges, including the felony breaking and entering. But he will be free of all charges in a year without having to serve any time. But he also has to write a confession to those charges and submit it to the New Mexico Bar Association, which would basically get him disbarred. Almost guaranteed get him disbarred. You committed a felony as a lawyer, you're held to that standard. You're screwed.
I think for Chuck, the diversion is just guaranteeing that Jimmy's going to get disbarred, in his eyes anyways. He doesn't want to risk it with a trial because he knows Jimmy is a good lawyer. Deep down, Chuck knows that he's going to, you know, find a way to get out of it.
A lot of the pre-trial, before we even see it happen, is the back and forth of like, you know, we're not going to let that tape play in the courtroom, or Howard's immediate response to hearing the tape being like, he's going to argue that's not his voice. He's going to argue you had him under duress. Like, it's not going to do anything. All that does legally is get the case rolling. You know, it's not actually viable in court. But then Chuck, being the actual good lawyer he is, realizes a written confession to a felony, like a person who admits, I did this felonious act, or whatever the hell you want to call it. That's like, if you get convicted and go to jail, you're guilty. You didn't confess to it. There's always the possibility that things went wrong. You confessed to it. You 100% did that.
Exactly.
And that's what's going to get you disbarred. And Chuck knows that too. It's like, do I want to go for the 90% play that might get him disbarred, or the 95% play that's more likely to get him disbarred? And he takes that.
And he knows that the disbarment panel, I forget what it was actually called.
The council.
Yeah. The law people.
Of disbarment lawyers. I don't know.
You know, he says they have looser standards for evidence admitting.
Which is insanity. That I heard that was like, is that wrong? They should have the strictest for evidence, in my opinion.
I was like, oh, okay, we'll just play fast and loose with the rules here for the lawmakers.
Oh, it's a brothers feud? Bring in your old journals from when you were teenagers. Like, dude, what the fuck? It's
my calendar from my teenage years. So glad you got that.
My dad would read his calendar. Oh, man. That would have been hilarious. Oh, fuck. That's too good. But yeah, that to me was very upsetting that was... Yeah, you know, like they're a bit more lenient on evidence. Like, what does that mean? Like, you could just bring a bloody knife in and be like, it's Jimmy's. Like,
it also made me think, has Chuck got other lawyers disbarred before?
Maybe. Maybe.
Is this a move he's pulled before?
Well, Jimmy says that's it's him and his cronies versus him.
Yeah.
But it's like, to what level are they loyal to Chuck? And then as we see in the courtroom, it doesn't really fucking matter when you're absolutely insane and think electricity is out to kill you. You just look like a crazy man on the stand. And that, to me, that case went back and forth so well when Jimmy brings in Rebecca, and under the guise of like, I'm worried about Chuck, and I know you are too. Here's what's been going on. Literally in the courtroom during this case, like Chuck reads that as trying to throw him off. In reality, it's just to amplify the effect of this man needs help. Why are we having this case when this man needs help?
And I think to a certain extent he did bring Rebecca in to help Chuck, because he knows Chuck won't let him in. He won't let him into the house. He won't let him in to help. And Chuck will need someone to help. As we see, he kind of goes off the deep end. And I think at the bottom line, Jimmy does want to help Chuck. I don't think he, when Rebecca comes to Jimmy, he should have gone with her to the house. I think that was a mistake, although I think that could have also aggravated the problem. But I still feel like he should have been willing to go and help his brother. I
agree he should have cared. I don't think he should have went, though. I disagree with you on that. But I agree, him being like, nope, not my brother anymore, is like, you just slapped him down in his house. Like, in a court of law with his peers, you made him look insane. Not even made him look insane, it made him snap on the stand. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, from what I've seen in law-based TV shows and movies, like A Few Good Men, Law and Order, shit like that, the person that you're trying to convict on stand breaking down like that is like the slam dunk of a lawyer in a courtroom. So, like, you just dunked on your brother, basically. You just dunked on your mentally ill brother.
Just got dunked on.
And he's just like, nope, done with him. It's like, no, you should have shown some concern, because even before, when shit was bad, you were still concerned about your brother.
Exactly. I do think, though, it kind of spurs Chuck to get help. He contacts that doctor.
He starts actually taking his his training almost seriously, because we've seen him do that in the past, but he just kind of fucks around with it and then stops.
So he's actually taking care of himself, and you see improvement. And then it's when, he has to face the real world consequences for his illness being a mental illness, in terms of his job and the malpractice insurance, and Howard wanting to buy him out of the company. That things start to really go off the deep end for him. And he, strongly regresses, I think, to the worst point we've ever seen him.
Well, the whole showdown in the courtroom, we should probably talk about that a little bit more, where Chuck tries to establish that Jimmy will lie, cheat, and steal his way in and out of the courtroom, and as we've seen him practicing at home, the law is too important to have somebody do that. And it's like, I've always observed the law as like a game where you want to be better at it. And I don't mean game to trivialize it. I mean, like, if I was going into, like, this might be a little bit too crude of an example, but like Space Jam, why wouldn't the Looney Tunes get Michael Jordan on their team? Like, if you're going into a courtroom, you're going to want the best lawyer that's going to do the most for you every single time. And out of Jimmy and Chuck, it's Jimmy, hands down. HHM versus Jimmy, still Jimmy. Like, he'll do that. That's what we've seen. So I don't necessarily think, like, Jimmy has also crossed that line and done some illegal things in the courtroom. But you know what? I feel like, as much as I am upset by that, if it was my ass sitting in the defense seat, I would want that. I would want, my lawyer to do any sort of underhanded, slightly illegal thing, as long as they can get away with it, to get me out of there, because I don't want to go to jail.
Yeah. It's all about how you can interpret and, in a way, manipulate the law.
Yeah, to your will. How you wield it.
Yeah, how you understand it.
And I think the way that Jimmy does it is a lot more effective, especially to the clients we see him represent in Breaking Bad, where he needs to know the criminal side of what's going on in order to defend you adequately.
Because he actually cares about getting the job done.
Well, and we see that in his court date with Chuck, when we finally get the appearance of Huel Babineau from Breaking Bad. I know it took you a second when he showed up on the screen to be like, oh, like he's the giant bodyguard for Saul.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he shows up because he's also a pickpocket, like a sleight of hand sort of dude, and he drops that cell phone battery. In
So
Chuck's,
smooth.
Yeah, and we even see the before when he goes to the vet and is like, I need somebody with a soft touch. And then the vet's like, does he have to get in any small places? It's like, what the hell? And then it's, yeah, because this guy's giant with like a super thick southern accent and is really good at pickpocketing people. And he puts that cell phone battery in Chuck's pocket. And like, that alone was the checkmate. He could have walked up to him and been like, Chuck, what's in your pocket? Pull out the battery, put it in his phone. Look how fake this is. But he revs him up to be like, you would feel it if this was happening, right? And then Chuck's like, yeah, you have something in your pocket right now, don't you? Psych, it's actually an empty cell phone.
Yeah.
Because like, that was such a good turn. Because even then, he could have pulled that phone out and been like, I've had this on me the entire case, and you haven't said anything. But the slam dunk is that you had somebody apparently, well, I guess this is where the statement of, like, the board has a lot less stringent rules for evidence would be like, yeah, you had Huel put that battery in him legally. He didn't assault him. You know, like, he didn't hurt him in any way. He just dropped that battery in his pocket and proved to the entire court that Jimmy was right and this whole sickness is in his head. Like, that, and that's what we've talked about this too off, is like, it is a mental illness, but like, mental illness seems like too high of a label for it, because if anybody who had like depression or like schizophrenia or like some sort of mental illness like that could be shown so simply, like, look, you're cured, do you not think they'd want to take that? Whereas Chuck sees it and is like, it's like ignorant to him, like it's like a slap in the face of his beliefs, and it's like, no, you should, like, on paper you should be so happy, but this is how difficult mental illnesses can be. And for Chuck to see it be like, you just don't need to know electricity's around you and you won't feel it, like, that to me is like the cure. Like, they represent that this is in your head, you need to stop being like this. And it's one of the only, I think it's the only mental illness we've ever seen where it's like, this is in your head, stop doing it. You know, like, you can't do that with anything else for mental illness. It's crazy that was a development, because it was even what the doctor did, and Jimmy was so offended that she did that to Chuck, and then he does it to Chuck in a room full of his peers and his ex-wife.
I was just going to bring that up, that, you know, we see the doctor illustrate that to Jimmy more than once, I think on both
the hospital
visits.
bed.
Yeah. But, you know, at that point, Jimmy's not willing to do it to Chuck. She's like, yeah, as much as this proves that it's all in his head, that's hurtful and shocking and isn't an instant cure. You know, it's not like, oh, he's gonna see that and, oh, I'm back to normal. It's like, now this is just, hopefully he realizes that he needs to take the steps to get help in another way, and we see him start to do that. But
yeah, he makes real progress after the case, which again, like, reinforces this is psychosomatic, this is in your head, you need to realize, like, you know, it's like, you can't give somebody pills and make them immune to electricity, you know? Like, it's not a chemical imbalance in his brain. It is a belief he holds that he needs to be proven wrong. And I don't think the best way to do it was to, like, you know, the cell phone battery, but, you know, desperate times call for desperate measures, and that's the example of it, is he's trying to get Jimmy disbarred because of his mental state, and you need to prove his mental state is not well.
exactly.
And it's not.
And it also makes me wonder how much of Jimmy's resentment Chuck's resentment for Jimmy is connected to his illness. Because it really does, you know, where it's rooted, kind of seems to be in Jimmy's relationship with his parents. That, you know, he was obviously closer with his mom, and his mom was, you know, they saw him as this good kid. They didn't see, you know, the cons he was pulling outside.
The real Jimmy, as he puts it.
Yeah. And Chuck thinks that he was pulling those cons on his parents as well, which, you know, we don't know definitively one way or the other. We've seen him take the $5 bill from the till in season 1.
I think it's
season 2. But in this season, we get the flashback to Jimmy going and collecting his coin collection from the old store.
With Marco.
Marco. And for a bit I was like, oh, is this his stash of money that he stowed away? And no, it's like cool coins. You know, he'd be rifling through the coin drawer, as Chuck would say. but maybe just to take these cool rare coins.
Well, and he even said too, where he told his dad, he's like, this quarter is worth $4, and his dad tries to give it back to the guy, and when he can't, tapes it to the register in case the guy ever comes back. Like, immediately I put myself in the guy who paid with that coin's shoes. What the fuck are you doing, man?
Like, it's not my quarter, you know.
No,
it's
currency I gave to you. Like, I unknowingly gave you more than what I was supposed to, but you unknowingly took it. It's not like you saw that and were like, oh my god, I did it for the $4, and put it away. Like, you know, like, it was just, I'm sure that I have a few American dollars in my wallet that I've used to pay for stuff, and people are like, here's your 32 cents. Like, no, I don't want that. I don't want a quarter and some other change. Like, you know, here's just the extra $1. So, like, for that guy to think, oh, he's going to want his coin of pocket change back. Like, you know what? I appreciate the mindset. Like, he was obviously a very nice man, but, like, as Jimmy describes him, he was a soft touch. He could just be pushed over, and he kept getting cheated, and that store went into the ground because of it. And that's where, like you said, it's rooted in their parents. Jimmy sees that as, I'm not going to let that be me, and Chuck sees it as, I'm going to be better than that.
And it was interesting to see Marco's perspective on his parents as well. How much he adored them and said, like, everyone in the town loved them.
Yeah, they loved the shop.
Yeah, but Jimmy's still being like, yeah, but, you know, they still put him out of business. Yeah. They loved him because it was, like, all the things they loved about him didn't make him a good businessman, didn't make him successful, didn't help his family in the same way that he was helping all these other families, which is, you know, heartwarming and heartbreaking all at once.
Well, and all this comes out during Chuck's rant in the courtroom, when he's like, my parents didn't see it, and, like, none of you see it, but Jimmy needs to be stopped. And then, like, he sees that everyone is just shocked that he's freaking out like this, which it should be. It was a really disturbing outburst because, you know, it's a court, you're the plaintiff, you're yelling at the defendant, but the defendant's your brother, and you're just, like, Jimmy was trying to prove in the case, my brother hates me. And then you literally just, like, boxed yourself in by being like, everyone should have been out to get him, and they weren't. And I'm right about that. Yeah. Like, you just look insane, man.
And especially when he opened up his statement with, my brother wants to get me up here and get me ranting and raving like a guilty murderer.
And then he does. Man.
You know, he's not going to unnerve me, and he's able to.
I was really impressed that court case, like that actual episode, wasn't in the finale. That was like 4 episodes away from the finale that resolved, because then we get a lot of, as you said, Chuck progressing in his illness and trying to get better and slowly getting better and tracking his progress and talking to the doctor, and he makes a lot of good steps. But then Jimmy, I'm not sure if it was knowingly or unknowingly, because Jimmy, after this whole case goes down, he gets a 1-year disbarment. So he can't practice law for 1 year. After that, he's good to go, as long as he doesn't break the law. Unfortunately, it means he's got to cut ties with all his clients. He can't run his commercials. He can't practice law at all. He can't even be a consultant, which was my first thought, was just be hired as a consultant.
Help Kim be her paralegal.
Can't do that either. You're not allowed to be anywhere near practicing law, which is pretty devastating.
But I guess makes sense.
Yeah, you know, it's like malpractice for a doctor. You know, if you screw up a surgery, they're not going to let you keep doing surgery.
Or be a nurse or something.
Yeah, like I understand that that's the punishment, but for him, that was a lot. So he tries to sell his advertisement time on that local news channel because he's sold a few for Jimmy McGill, the lawyer. You know, your buddy Jimmy, call him to get your will done, stuff like that. But he still had, I think it was 9 slots to begin with, and he sells 2 of them very easily. But then he gets stuck with the Guitar Center one, and I'm bringing this up because that whole interaction is Jimmy is willing to shoot them a commercial for free and put it on for free, and if they notice an uptick in business, they will buy the rest of his airtime. And he films the commercial, he puts it on air, they notice the uptick, but then they get really upset at him for the price, which is expensive, but the way he explains it is legal. Like, he's not lying to anybody. He says, I never said I worked for them. I'm an advertisement company. I bought the airtime. I'm offering to shoot a commercial for you and put it on that airtime.
And make some money.
Well, and, like, you know, in radio it was the same way. It's not like, oh, like, you can go into radio stations right now and for less than $80 get a commercial put on air once. But if you want that radio station to write the commercial, it's going to cost you more than $80. So there's that aspect of it too. And again, it's 2002. That's definitely 2002, 2003. It's definitely expensive, but they were being kind of dicks because they agreed to this. You know, like they made this agreement. Whether like do your research before you agree to it, definitely. And this is where we see the full mix of Jimmy McGill / Saul Goodman come out, or sorry, Slippin' Jimmy and Saul Goodman come out because he's willing to take that fall in the Guitar Center in order to get the commercials sold, and also gets that guitar he wanted so badly.
Yep.
And that's where, to me, that's the shaping of Saul Goodman. It's that middle ground between moral Jimmy McGill doing what's right, but willing to break the law, and Slippin' Jimmy who's willing to screw over people to get his way. It's that little middle ground. Saul Goodman is
the
where
gray area.
Yeah, where he'll do what needs to be done to himself or to someone else. And that's how we know Saul Goodman. You know, like he in Breaking Bad, he's got bodyguards. Mike works for him, like for reasons. You know, he's not just his receptionist.
Exactly.
Like, he has people that do this. So that to me is that was like scene one, Saul Goodman in the Guitar Center. But then as things continue, especially after Rebecca coming by, Kim feels really bad about how they dunked on Chuck in the courtroom.
But that's also because she doesn't realize Chuck's improvement after the case.
Well, yeah, there's no communication between them after the case.
I think what really does that for her is Jimmy's reaction when Rebecca shows up and asks him to come to the house. I think she realizes that, you know, this isn't a step to improving their relationship and to getting Chuck more help that he needs. Because I always think, what would Chuck's recovery have been like if Jimmy or Rebecca or anyone was there helping him along the way? You know, because that's obviously not something you can do alone. And obviously it's not, you know, the doctor says it's not always going to be smooth sailing. You're going to have a hiccup. And Howard not trusting him is a huge hiccup. And if he had had more of a support system there, maybe it wouldn't have been this crazy spiral that we see, him ripping the walls apart and
looking for electricity that's not there. Well, I was also very impressed with how the HHM versus Chuck part plays out, where Jimmy, and this is where I was mentioning earlier, we see Jimmy on the phone with his insurance company trying to get his malpractice insurance refunded because he's not going to be able to practice law for a year. Why would he pay for insurance that he will never use?
Yeah.
And they explain it to him as, well, if somebody from your past comes back and sues you, this is still in effect, so you're going to want to keep it that way. And I think that was to get Jimmy into the door to speak with somebody face to face in order to properly articulate that his brother needs to be looked at. I think that was Jimmy's plan from the get-go, because it's like, you know what, I get it, you want your money back, but like you've also paid up already, and they're not going to give you that money back.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so why is he pestering this so much until he's in there talking to that representative and says, when she asks his name, just says McGill, knowing that Chuck will come up first. Alphabetically, Chuck's going to come up first.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, Chuck is in the insurance company's sights, and as we, you know, learn a few minutes after that, his premiums are going to go up because of his mental illness.
But they also offer that if he was just getting shadowed by another senior partner, they wouldn't raise the premiums. And he is not willing to do that whatsoever.
Well, neither's Howard, because that would be, like, when you think of it of a law firm like that, if you're getting the partner to look at your case, you're paying, I would say, thousands of dollars a day.
Yeah.
To do that.
I
so
mean,
nobody's gonna be like, yeah, I'm willing to pay double. You know, it's gonna make honestly, if it was Howard who was shadowing Chuck, it would make Howard's dad the one who's got to do all the fucking work. You know, he would be the one getting hired by everyone if they were at that level of like case.
Yeah, you're just doubling someone else's workload because they've got to shadow him
for profits. You know, if it'd be different if it was like, well, Howard makes $21 and Chuck makes $19. We're going to lose money on that. It's like, no, they make thousands of dollars every day doing this. You can't expect them to sink one of their revenue streams to make another one sustainable.
True.
But like, I understand why why the insurance company would want that. It'd be like on the work safety training. You know, if somebody screws up, you're going to want them trained properly, and you're going to want them trained properly by somebody you know is going to do the job correctly. So I kind of get where the insurance company is coming from, but Howard, hearing about the insurance premium increase for Chuck, forces him out of HHM. He offers retirement to him, Chuck refuses. He says, I will make you leave. Chuck threatens to sue him. And Howard goes above all that and pays him the first installment of his $8 million severance to make him leave. That's crazy. Out of his own money. Doesn't take it from HHM. Howard goes into his personal money to get Chuck the fuck out of there.
Which, how much personal money does Howard have?
Well, how much more his premium's going to go up for insurance if Howard's willing to take out, like, let's say it's $8 million. Let's say he pays him quarterly. $2 million right there.
Yeah.
That you have to pay. How bad is that insurance premium going to be? How much money do you lose if $2 million right now is the better financial decision for your company?
Well, it's not just the premiums now, but it's like he says, he doesn't trust Chuck's judgment.
No, he screwed up too much.
And, he's placated to Chuck this far, and look where it's landed them. What's he going to do next? What decision will he make that it affects the company next? So I get where Howard's coming from, but I think it's rather unfortunate for Chuck that it kind of undid so much of the progress he was making.
Yeah, that really gives him to spiral into going back to no electricity, get everything out of my house. And he was like, obviously he was still in pain, but he had the lights back on. He was using a hand blender, like making real progress, impressive progress.
And kind of being a dick about it.
Oh yeah, like
in his typical Chuck fashion.
Like it's like he's Thomas Edison in like the early 1900s. Like, oh, look at my electricity. It's like, Chuck, everyone has this in their home. Like, you're the fucking psycho for not having electricity in your home all the time. But then the season ends, for Chuck at least, with him kicking over one of his gas lanterns into a pile of papers, which we see after Mike poses as a handyman going into the house for Jimmy to get pictures of how shitty the house is. So even that comes back. Jimmy was right. The house was not safe. Chuck knew that and uses that to start a fire. Whether it's to kill himself, whether it's to bring attention, whether it's just because he's a dick, we're going to find out in the next season.
That's one of my big questions as the season ends. Do you think Chuck is going to die in that scene?
I'll save my full theory on that for the end, but I think it's going to affect Chuck in a way that forces him to deal with electricity constantly. I think that's what's going to be the outcome of his house burning down.
Interesting.
Well, like I said, I'll talk more about it at the end there.
Okay.
But also, one of the other big developments, money-wise, for the season is Jimmy finding out he could get $1.1 million from the Sandpiper settlement. From
a lot of
season
money.
1. He could become a millionaire very easily, and that would just change his life, considering he is totally unemployed right now.
And struggling financially, it seems.
Yeah, so $1.1 million. He does some pretty terrible things. I know you didn't like the Irene story involving Jimmy. And
oh, that was so heartbreaking.
I knew it as soon as I said it.
I
made a note.
That poor bullying. Oh my God. That was so upsetting to me. I actually cried about poor Irene.
Yeah.
And getting left out of her group and just... like Jimmy, that's another case where I think Jimmy realizes, he's messing with people's lives. It's more than just getting the outcome that he wants. Like, she's an old lady who is now more alone than she's ever been in her senior life. And he was supposed to be helping her and looking out for her best interests.
I agree 100%. It was devastating to see her, like, shunned from her walking group. And, like, that scene where she's walking up on them being like, ladies! Oh. Ladies! And they're so pissed. I know you're going to start crying now just thinking about it, aren't you?
No.
Maybe a little bit. But also, like, I agree. That was really mean and underhanded. But I was kind of upset at Irene for not taking her responsibilities as the case representative, or the class representative, more serious. Because she just offhanded was like, oh, yeah, they sent me the first offer, but they told me to ignore it. And, like, I get it's the first offer. You want to ignore it. That's kind of like the business practice is you don't take the first offer, right? But she didn't even look at it and just was like, they told me not to, so I'm not going to. But that was 15 people that would have made almost $1 million each. Jimmy makes the most amount because he represented them versus, like, the other people. But, like, every one of those women had a point in being upset she didn't think of them in that settlement. I totally empathize with that. What Jimmy did to make that happen, though, not okay.
But she also says, Aaron, that young
lawyer
that Jimmy resented or was annoyed by. I don't know.
Yeah. Didn't hated her because she was professional?
Yeah. You know, she advised them, don't take it. Because that realistically is the right move. You ignore the first offer, they're going to make a bigger one. They know they can make more money down the line. They're trying to lowball us. And she trusts Erin's judgment like she trusts Jimmy's. Because Jimmy's always taken such good care of them.
No, I agree.
And she's learned that Jimmy is a lawyer I can trust. Jimmy put me in the hands of Erin. I can trust her. And now Jimmy's going back on that and kind of like, he's looking out for his best interest right now. He wants the payout now of $1 million. Because, you know, the little bit down the line, that gravy on top won't make that big of a difference.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. If you become a millionaire 5 years from being broke, you're still broke for 5 years.
Exactly.
Like, it doesn't help you now. But I agree. He only cares about the other women because his situation.
Yeah.
But that to me was like the shadowing of like, if Irene had have just called Jimmy or, you know, talked to, because the women didn't know either. That was what stuck with me too, was the women were like, there's been an offer for a settlement. We haven't heard any of this.
Yeah.
And Jimmy's like, yeah, they offered this much money. You would get this. Irene hasn't talked to you about this. But thankfully at the end, he sees his error of his ways with the fake microphone accident at the bingo hall. And it's just like, I did listen to all these old crones and their stupid stories for weeks. Like, I should get my money now, knowing they're listening to kind of absolve Irene of all this wrongdoing that he put on her. So that was nice that at the very core, at the end, Jimmy still understands he needs to do the right thing to some people.
And I kind of saw that as a little bit of foreshadowing of why Jimmy McGill might have to stop being Jimmy McGill and become Saul Goodman, is that, you know, he's going to do something, sacrifice his reputation to do the good thing and have to be able to move forward from that. You know, he already says, you know, I'm going to have to find a whole new clientele. I've fucked myself with the elderly now. But I wonder what else he's going to do, and kind of, I could see that happening on a greater scale and having more long-term consequences for Jimmy McGill.
So if you think that's what's going to end up being the downfall / change of Jimmy McGill to Saul Goodman, I'm wondering where the whole Kim story is going to be going, because this season was easily like the most in-depth about her and what her goals are and what she's willing to do to achieve them, and unfortunately how hard that can be. And I'm not sure, like, to me, right from the get-go, the roles kind of change with her and Jimmy a bit when they're talking about how they're going to go up against Chuck and the board and what's going to happen with the case that they're both involved in. And Jimmy's like, this is going to be bad. You know, it's going to go wrong. This isn't even worth the fight. And Kim keeps saying, no, like, you gotta keep your neck out. You gotta, you know, keep your chin up. We have a way to rebut this. And, like, you know, she frequently, and I kind of really dug this about the season, was on both sides with Chuck and Howard and Jimmy and Kim, was like the breakdown of each other's moves within their own moves. When it's like, okay, we know that Chuck has the tape. He can't use that in court because he knows that we will say it's not you, or we will say it's been edited, or we'll say it's under duress. So what's his move after that? And then we see Chuck and Howard at the same time be like, they know that we know we're not going to use this in court. So, like, you know, I really enjoyed that.
I know that you know that I know that you know.
But you don't know that I know that you know that I know. It's like,
exactly.
It just went on long enough where it was enjoyable to see, like, how correct they were and how off they were. Because at the get-go, they didn't know what Chuck's plan was. And then as soon as he was like, oh, I'm going to put up the offer where, like, it defers your sentence unless you do anything bad, right away he's like, he's like, it's not about me going to jail, it's about me not practicing law anymore.
But Kim knew from the get-go that he had a plan. She was so level-headed about it and was like, you need to just sit and wait for him to make his first move. Otherwise, you're just going to fall right into his trap. And what does he do? He storms in there and fucking Jimmy falls right into the trap.
Even that rundown, too, was funny when Howard's like, look, Chuck, we can't keep round-the-clock PIs in the hopes that Jimmy shows up. And he's like, we need to be here. Jimmy's going to strike at night when he knows I least expect it.
Yeah.
And then, like, 2-3 seconds later, he's kicking
in
the
broad daylight.
Yeah. Open up, you fucking prick! Like, just and so mad.
Could you imagine if he was like 15 minutes later and Chuck had lost that discussion with Howard and been like, no, this is it. I'm taking the PI with me. You know?
We're not paying this guy $300 an hour to sit in front of your fucking gas lantern in your living room.
The lesson is always wait 15 more minutes before you go and yell at your sibling.
Before you make a big decision. But then that was really surprised me too, was in the courtroom when Chuck has his outburst. Kim feels really bad about forcing, in heavy air quotes, that to happen. You know, because like Jimmy's move on that with the cell phone battery secures him the case. He makes the case not about what he's done wrong. He makes it about a brother looking out for his mentally ill brother. And they reveal that in court to the point where, like, Chuck's outburst makes everybody, like, kind of, you know, jaw drop it. Like, wow, this guy feels that way about his own little brother. You know, like, that really surprises them.
It is really shocking. I think especially if you have a little brother, a little sister, big brother, big sister, to just... You have to be in a really dark place to feel that way about someone you're supposed to, you know, love for life, be your best friend. I'm sure a lot of people, you know, have heard it from their parents. Oh, you have to love your brother or sister because they're going to be here when I'm not. And it's...
Yeah, gotta take care of each other.
It's startling.
But that,
the way Chuck reacts.
But that guilt over making Chuck have that outburst in court affects Kim in ways I was surprised to see from her character, because initially she feels bad and says that to Mesa Verde during her meeting when they're like, wow, like, you know, you really did a number on him in court. And she's like, well, you know, like, it was what I was hired to do, like, you know, the typical, like, lawyer, it was my job sort of thing. But you can tell she feels really upset about it. And then when Howard shows up in the restaurant when she's having lunch with the Mesa Verde clients and she offers to pay the loan, that, again, is pretty guilt-ridden, you know? Like, she doesn't want to owe them anything because she just destroyed, like, 1/3 of that company.
I feel like she's starting to question the way the law functions and the way being a lawyer, like, what that demands of you. Like, you see it when, you know, she won the case, she did her job, she defended Jimmy, but she's broken up about it. And she's distraught and kind of disturbed by the effect that had on Chuck, even though that was the outcome they wanted. You know, that's basically plan successful. And you do, like, when she's talking, I can't think of the woman's name from Mesa Verde.
Yeah, one of the representatives.
Her Paige?
No, that's who. I swore it was Paget Brewster was the actress that played her. And it's not. It is like, if the woman who represents Mesa Verde in this show ever needs a stunt double job, she could be Paget Brewster's stunt double, and I would never be able to tell the difference. I don't know what her name is. I'm sorry. Let me see if I can look it up in my notes real quick here.
Anyways, you know, she does seem really broken up about it, and like it has her total focus. And you know, that's kind of when she starts to spiral and not sleep. Even, you know, she's already not been sleeping because she works so much, but it seems to just take it to an emotionally disturbed level, which then leads to her accident.
Well, directly in that meeting with Mesa Verde, and Howard shows up because he's like, I'm doing damage control for what you did to our company. When she gives him the check for the remainder of her student loans, that is like, in her mind, I am now guilt-free of what I've done.
Yeah.
You know, because she goes back to the table, and after the guy from Mesa Verde, I can't remember his name, is pressuring her to be like, yo, I got this buddy in the company, and he's hoping he can get somebody to look over his books and work some magic like you did for us. Would you be interested? And she's like, no. I said you would be my only client, and I swore to that. And he really, like, pushes farther than anyone I've ever known to give somebody else a job opportunity. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, you really should have a look at it. She's like, no, I said it'd be fine. He's like, you do a great job. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
he has so much confidence in her, which does seem to put quite a bit of pressure. Because, you know, obviously she sells herself hard to get that client, but then it is a lot of work. And it kills me that she, at the start, it's like, I'm going to need 1, maybe 2 paralegals, and I'm going to pay for that out of my end. And instead, they just hire one receptionist that seems to be doing mostly work for Jimmy.
Yeah, reception work, not even legal work.
Yeah, just doing some filing and whatnot for Kim. Like, she's clearly overloaded. Like, she needs help. But I think she's afraid to let anyone... It's almost like that Chuck, you know, neurotic tendency that, like, I can't let anyone else touch it and risk making a mistake.
Yeah, she focuses too much on all the details that shouldn't be her issue at the level she's at anymore. And it definitely gets to her with the car crash, which I was surprised the little naps they show her taking. I think it was like 2 episodes before where she pulls up to the meeting 5 minutes earlier than she needs to be there and has a quick nap in her car, but it goes by in like a snap.
Yeah.
That I didn't realize that was a setup. I saw that and was like, yo, I've been there. Like who hasn't had that nap where it's like that nap could have been fucking 5 hours and it wouldn't have been enough.
Exactly.
Like so a 5-minute nap that just doesn't do it for you. And then for her to fall asleep in the car, which again, what a horrible place to like take naps routinely, in the driver's seat of your car. I didn't even think of that until she fell asleep at the wheel. Like I've slept in vehicles, but it's like the back seat. It's in like, the trunk of the SUV, whatever it may be. I never sleep sitting up in the driver's seat.
Never.
Because if you can fall asleep like that, you can fall asleep while it's moving.
Oh, exactly.
And that was a very jarring way to end the episode too. Her smashing into that boulder going onto the highway, the papers just going everywhere and breaking her arm. That was a devastating wrap, because after that, like, Kim continues to do bare minimum of her job and kind of takes the time to stop and smell the roses, which is good, but does that classic overcorrection and is like lazy all day and like doesn't really want to do too much, and eventually comes back around to it. But that was an interesting way to kind of keep Kim going after Jimmy's whole case resolved, like episode 6 or episode 7. And interesting that they decided to take her out of the law game as well with her injury. Like both her and Jimmy are kind of MIA for the next little bit.
Yeah, she seems to be stepping back.
And they gave up the office after that too, which was a big step for their company, because that was Jimmy's like, no, we're going to keep the office. But then they both come to the realization that, with her working less and him working none.
Well, it seemed like a very protective move on Jimmy's part as well, because at least if Kim's working at home and she gets tired, she just has to go to bed, or she falls asleep in the couch, less danger, less chance of her falling asleep on the road again.
Yeah, jeez.
Holy. I also thought it was interesting, and I wonder if it played into Kim's guilt at all about Chuck, that she, when he was initially in the hospital and the doctor kind of reveals that, this is, when he's not aware of the electricity, he's not having any reaction.
Yeah, he needs to know.
Kim was kind of pushing for Jimmy to do more than just take him home, and
she was.
That he needs more help than that, and maybe she feels like she should have pushed harder then, and made Jimmy realize that it's not just you being a good brother doing this. Sometimes you have to do not just what Chuck says is in his best interest, because Chuck doesn't know what's in his best interest.
Well, it made me feel for Kim too, because like we've said in the last couple episodes, she was that underdog that just wouldn't give up. In like coming from a place where Jimmy McGill, like has to fight every inch against his little brother, she really stuck out as like she will get the work done regardless of it is, because she wants that result and she wants to achieve that. And it was devastating to see her feel guilt-ridden as a result of that hard work that she did, and then to add to it, get in a car accident. This should have been the season where like all of that hard work is finally achieved. Like whether it's like Mesa Verde, like off the top of my head, cuts her a huge bonus check. Like, you saved us like millions of dollars. Here's like an extra $200,000 for doing your job. Something like that where it's like, exactly. Oh my God. I don't know if that happens in real life. I've never had that happen. If someone would like to make that happen for me,
Please do.
I will write you my address for that. But that's what I was hoping. And like, I wonder if this is Vince Gilligan kind of setting us up and being like, you don't always get the right ending. Not the happy ending. That's the Game of Thrones territory. But like, just because she's put in the hard work doesn't mean she's going to get the reward for that. Doesn't even mean she's going to see the reward for that.
Sometimes in life you can do everything right and work as hard as you can and still not get the outcome you want.
Yeah, she worked herself until she was worn right out and got in a car accident and took herself out of the game now for way longer. Yeah. It's one of those things where you have to find that happy medium. Everything in moderation.
Exactly. And I feel like she's now questioning, have I made have I made the right choice? Am I taking the right path? Not in terms of going off on her own law practice, but being in law in general, I think.
Oh yeah, well we've seen her get like slapped down through seasons by Howard, like when she brought Mesaverde in the earlier season, and then when he put her in the document room again, even after that.
Yeah.
It's just like, you could do something that would get you praise so much, and because the guy in charge doesn't like you, you're not going to get that praise. And like she still fights against that, and I'm hoping she comes out on top in the next season. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. I can see her continuing to slide into laziness, into being docile.
I could almost see her taking the Jimmy floating in the pool hiatus.
Yeah, that she had to convince him out of.
Exactly.
Now that we've been talking more about it, there's been a lot of role reversals too, because as I was saying what I expected to happen to Kim, it made me realize that Mike got that ending this season. Ending with an asterisk. There's still more to go. But Mike starting it, like the season started with a quick recap of him with Gus, or sorry, not with Gus, with Hector out in the desert, and he was ready to shoot Hector out in the desert, and Gus put that note that said "don't" on his car.
That was terrifying. Like, that was so off-putting and creepy.
That tone of a vehicle horn, like I heard, like again, whoever's doing like the cinematography or like like whatever you call that final setup, where like the video and the effects and the sound and the music all come together to make that point, because like he's looking down the scope at Hector and you can hear the horn start, but it's just like it's just far enough back in the sound where like it doesn't take notice right away, and then when other sounds change, but that stays constant. 'Cause it's a horn, like everybody knows that, just resonant sound. That was so good, and then it shows him getting closer, and it's louder, and like, but just that constant tone. It reminded me like Silent Hill when the sirens go off when everything's switching over.
Wow.
It was a really cool moment, and it's just a car horn. It was a car horn, a branch, and a piece of paper, and like Mike is like, what the fuck? And gets the hell out of there and rips his vehicle apart, his Oldsmobile apart, trying to find the bug. And where does he end up finding the bug?
Gas cap.
Which, like, that again terrified me in real life. 'Cause it's like our gas cap to our vehicle is attached to the vehicle, right?
Yeah, by a dinky little cord.
Yeah, if somebody was able to attach a new gas cap to that cord, I wouldn't fucking notice.
No, how often do you look at your gas cap? Even if you had it memorized and could somehow, identify a new cap, you could go like a week or more.
Yeah, fill up.
But between fill-ups and not looking at it.
They could catch you at the gas station while you're paying.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even know. Like it's such a terrifying way of doing it, because as we've seen before, they'll do the GPS tracker, but that is like you don't even know you're getting tracked. And like Mike too, seasoned veteran on that, didn't know that was like a new trick. Like he tore his vehicle apart expecting to find a GPS and was like, fuck, it's in the gas cap.
And he seems so defeated when it's like, he had literally searched every inch of that car and there wasn't a tracker, but he knew he was being followed somehow, but also knew that no one was tailing him because he would have seen them. Like, he's just like,
it's so much chess.
Oh.
But then again, after realizing like, wow, I would have never thought of that to put a tracker in, Mike's plan of buying a dummy gas cap. And
he's brilliant.
Yeah, that plan blew my... I didn't realize what that plan was in motion until it got to the point when they picked it up again. Because Mike buys a similar gas cap and then replaces it in his vehicle and drains the battery in the GPS that's in the original gas cap. And then they realize that they're tracking him. Shit, the GPS is dead. He swaps it back out. They unknowingly pick up a GPS that he's now
planted.
Tracking. I was like, oh my god,
it's brilliant.
Yeah, I would have never thought that.
Tracking genius.
It was so good too that he even took the time to drain it and thought, okay, they can't see me moving around right now. Time to make some fucking power moves.
Yeah,
like that was such a smart thing of like cat and mouse, that just watching that unfold and be like, I don't get what's going on, but I know Mike's a step ahead of them. And it's like, oh shit, they picked up the tracker. Are they a step ahead of Mike? Oh shit, he replaced the tracker. Like, I love that in TV shows when they can get you really good with that stuff.
And then him watching them discuss replacing the tracker, because they haven't been able to actively track him at that moment, was just like so ominous and cool. Like, ugh.
And then when he finally tracks him to Los Polos Hermanos, which immediately you and I were just like, oh shit, like that's where Gus works. And then watching the scene where Jimmy goes in to case the place because Mike needs to know what that courier is doing with the bag when he goes in there. Kind of seems like he's just eating chicken on his trip. You know?
I still feel like something happened.
Definitely, yeah.
Because Jimmy was wrong when he said no one came to the table, no one touched the bag.
Really?
Because Gus sweeps. He sweeps the table, and he sweeps right next to the bag, and it makes me wonder if maybe somehow a message is relayed that way. Like, I don't think he's dropping off drugs in the open of the lobby. Because we do see later that other truck pull to the back.
Yeah.
But it makes me wonder if it's like, them dropping off a message of the delivery. Or maybe I'm overthinking that sweeping scene and it's literally he just really loves the chicken.
Well, while they were showing Saul, excuse me, watching the courier, they had like an out of focus Gus in the back sweeping, I swear, watching Jimmy. Like
I think so.
That was the point. Is like he's always a step ahead of you because at the very end, when like the courier leaves, Jimmy goes back to Mike's car and is like, "Nothing fucking happened. Like I don't get what the thing is." And they leave. Gus is outside watching them.
He was definitely watching Jimmy.
He always knows.
Because Jimmy was also not being the most stealthy spy.
No. I know he couldn't. Like I've never seen somebody look more panicked in a fast food place in my life.
Literally.
Like it just like straight, like back straight, palms flat on the table, not moving his head, but looking in a hard direction over at somebody. It's like, man, like if I was sitting there and I saw you in the corner of my eye, I'd be like, who the fuck is this guy looking at? Like, you immediately pick up on that. And if he's looking at your guy carrying money, drugs, whatever it may be, you're gonna look at that guy and you're gonna watch that guy. And like that was such a cool way of it. Like you knew it was Gus just looking at him, just like that tall, wiry frame and like the light yellow button-up shirt that kind of reminds me of Dwight's shirt from The Office.
Yeah,
like it just right away it's Gus.
And it was so phenomenal when Jimmy's rummaging through the garbage and Gus comes in. Can I help you, sir, with anything? Like,
yeah, I'll go through the garbage for you, no problem. Like,
yeah.
Literally, and I said that too. I was like, I would be the best fast food worker ever if I was sitting on millions of dollars. Like, you know what I mean? Not getting paid to handle a lot of shit makes a big difference. And if you're handling the stuff that a lot of fast food workers have to go through, or managing them or anything like that, just general customer service in that regard, but you have like millions of dollars at home, who fucking cares what this person yelling at you about like onions on their burger thinks,
Yeah.
Like I just customer service would be so much easier if you had millions of dollars.
You wouldn't give a fuck.
But then after that whole exchange goes on and Gus and Mike have their confrontation because Gus understands what Mike's trying to do but can't let him do it, Mike comes up with yet another fucking genius plan because he's like, I want to still get after Hector, but since you won't let me kill him, I'm going to have to do something else. And Gus is like, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. That's fine. Just don't kill him, Bring police attention to him if that's your goal, but just make sure it's not something that's going to come to me. And he does that, the shoe trick, where he buys a bag of cocaine, stuffs it in the toe of a pair of red Converse, swings them over top of the telephone lines, which some people may not know that, at least where we come from. That was the sign for there's a drug dealer present. Like, if you needed to buy drugs, you just went to where the pair of sneakers was hanging over the line, hung out for like 5 minutes, and we'd roll up and offer you drugs. That was always the way it worked in our little town. So that was like, I really enjoyed seeing that, and then for it to be taken to the Better Call Saul level of, I'm going to fucking shoot a sniper round into these shoes so that the cocaine falls on your truck and gets you busted by border security. Like, that's another plan I would have never thought of. And that was Mike's, like, obviously I'm going to fucking do this.
And there were so many layers to that plan as well. Like, shooting off the gun multiple times so they just think it's Hunter so that he can shoot the shoe and they're not going to get suspicious.
And like you said, too, the gun dealer told him, if you're firing the barrel cold, you got to compensate a lot more. So trying to shoot a swinging pair of shoes in the toe of one shoe, you're going to want a warmed up barrel for that.
And warm it up he did.
Yeah, and the hunting was a perfect cover. Like, it's just so many layers of that like I would never expect. And for Mike, not only does he have that ability to think of that, I feel like his training as a cop, he saw a lot of ways criminals conducted themselves and was able to learn from that. Because like anybody that meets him that tries to like put like that alpha tone on him doesn't work. Like the only time I've ever seen him worried was when he heard his car horn going off. Because somebody snuck up on him while he was looking down the sight of a rifle and got the drop on him, which like terrified him. You know, it's the only time I've ever seen him scared in this series, at least.
And it was that weird realization too of like, whose car horn is that? And like, that's my car horn.
Yeah, that's what's the scary part is you realize I'm the only one out here, and to also park it far enough where. I'm sure in like, the overarching part of this, but like it had to be loud enough where Mike would hear it, Hector wouldn't hear it, and Gus knew that Mike would be using a sniper rifle far enough away where that sound would work. Like that is again another level of that plan I would have never expected.
Yeah.
Like, you need an audio sound to make this guy know you're there, but you can't let somebody 300 meters away hear it. Like, wow, that's planning.
Well, and I thought part of the fear, too, was that maybe Hector would, hear it.
Yeah, in Mike's mind.
Yeah,
definitely.
In Mike's mind. And it was also really eerie, too, where it's like, all of Hector's key players we know are inside this building. We just watched them all go into this building that we can see all the exits from. Like, Who could this possibly be?
The only one missing would be Tuco, because he's in jail.
Yeah.
Who,
is in jail.
Stabs a guard, I think.
Just an idiot.
And gets like, and Hector's like, he's gonna be in there for fucking ever. It's like, yeah, but he did it to himself. Like, he's like, you helped him. You got Mike to admit that the gun was his, even though it wasn't. You did your part. He fucked that up. Like, don't worry about it anymore.
Also, good on you for calling him Tuco and not Taco.
Tuco's Tacos.
That was
this episode sponsored by
Tuco's Tacos.
It's not.
If you're not from Sudbury and listening, we have a local vegan taco joint called Tuco's Tacos, which is phenomenal and has the best nachos ever. Hashtag we're not sponsored. I just love them.
Bean burrito.
So I think that's why Bobby kept calling him
I
Taco.
always think taco. It's not a race thing at all.
Plus, it's just, Tuco, Taco, Nacho. It all works.
He literally has a cousin named Nacho. Like, I'm not dumb for thinking that, It's an obvious mistake. But after all this planning goes on, Gus offers to hire Mike, which is really cool. Because that is where the first layer of, like, the players we know beginning to intermingle happens with Gus. Like, Mike's the first one that starts doing business with him. Jimmy eventually gets into business with him.
Yeah.
Mike works for him before he worked for Jimmy, which is crazy.
And Gus already has the brunette lady working for him.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. And then we find out she owns the company that ends up hiring Mike because when Mike gets the route shut down like Gus wanted, he receives payment for it. And typical Mike fashion, refuses payment for the best job done I've ever seen in my life.
Always.
And Gus is like, well, then what do you want for doing this? And he's like, look, I got almost $250,000 I need laundered. Help me with that.
Help me, buddy.
And then to find out, too, that really surprised me when that woman, I can't remember her name, too, but I'm sure she'll become a more important figure in the next season, says, like, no, I've never done this for anybody. Like, this is the first time we're laundering money for somebody other than the cartel. Like, that's how much he impressed Gus.
Yeah, Gus, I think that speaks to how good Mike is at what he does and how capable and valuable he is. Like, Gus sees him as super valuable. He sees the potential to have him on his team. And I also think unknown named brunette lady, what the hell is her name?
She's like the CEO of the legit company that they own, Excuse me.
I feel like she looks a lot, less unhinged than she does in Breaking Bad when we get to see her.
She was in full panic mode in Breaking Bad.
Yeah. Like, stuff is clearly going well for her. So it's going to be interesting to see some of the breakdown of that as well.
Well, like we said earlier, too, Gus is in that mode, too. Like, when he shows up in, like, that super slick Italian suit,
Yeah.
It's like, when did Gus ever give a shit about intimidating somebody with clothing? You
Exactly.
know, like we saw him slit that dude's throat and then just like look at Walt and Jesse while the guy died. Like, I don't give a fuck about my own guys. Like, but I'm gonna show up in this really sweet black Italian suit. Like, you know, whatever that Gus we knew becomes, he's not there yet. You know, like, he's got to get to that point. I'm sure it's going to be in the feud with Hector, but I also think that his motives for helping Mike, on top of him just being impressed with how Mike does business, he's aware that Mike is the middleman between him and the cartel. Mike knows Nacho. They have a really good dialogue going on, so that's kind of his in to what's happening without fully having to have like a mole in the cartel.
Well, I think that Gus has a plan to eliminate Hector in time.
Oh, hell yeah.
And have someone more reasonable, perhaps Nacho, take over the reins.
Definitely. You know what? That's a really good point, because Nacho is the level-headed one.
Yeah.
But he also, like, you know, he'll kick someone's ass when he's told to. But, you know, he knows that that's not always the best course of action.
He has some restraint.
And also, we learn in that situation, when Mike and Nacho talk, that Nacho's going to kill Hector because Hector wants to bring Nacho's father in as the new distribution route to get the drugs from Mexico into New Mexico, I believe is their problem.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's like, my dad's a fucking straight-laced, like, by-the-books guy. He's going to tell you to fuck off and go, and then he'll go to the cops, and then he's going to get killed. Like, I love that about Nacho. He's like, that's what my dad's going to do. It's not like we're going to convince him. He's going to go to the cops.
That's what he's going to do. And not only does Hector want to use him as a smuggling route, he wants to do that against the cartel's wishes, which is like all sorts of danger for Nacho's family, which he is not willing to risk.
And is willing to kill Don Hector, like his boss, to do it. And his plan to do it is actually really smart. I've thought about it a little bit. The plan to replace his nitroglycerin pills with ibuprofen so that the next time he has a heart attack or a heart episode, whatever you want to call it, he doesn't get the relief from the nitroglycerin and then would die from the heart attack he obviously has because he's old and that's the condition he has. Makes a lot of sense. Ibuprofen too wouldn't really be detected because he died of a heart attack. You know, like they wouldn't run a drug test.
He could just be having ibuprofen for an unrelated headache.
It's not like you'd have cyanide or rat poison where it's like, what the fuck? Like, you know, and a really smart plan too. But Mike gives him the fucking cherry on top.
The ultimate suggestion to replace the drugs afterwards so that it's not, you know, you're not drawing attention to the fact that the pills weren't what the pills were supposed to be.
If he dies as a result of something not working, you want to make it seem like that thing worked and it just sort of happened, right?
But man, does Gus ever look suspicious when that goes down.
Oh,
I think he sees Nacho replacing the pills again, or at least fucking around with them.
Yeah, when there's finally the freak out at the upholstery place when he's like, no, we're going to use your dad's company as a distribution thing. You're not going to stop us. Gus and the other guy show up, whose name I can never remember. I want to say Bolva, but I think I'm wrong on that. I'll double check that in a second. He shows up, and they're like, no, the cartel wants it to go this way. Stop screwing with us. And he's like, no, I'm going to do what I want, which is
no disrespect.
Thing. Yeah, which doesn't make any sense to me because it's the cartel. You've worked with the cartel. You know what's going to happen. Like, when you fuck with them, you've been the guy that's killed people, that's fucked with the cartel. Why would you fuck with the cartel? But, you know, he's Hector. He's trying to be the fucking big boss because he hates Gus. Like, you know,
he feels screwed out of his place somehow.
Yeah, it's a personal thing becoming a business thing, which is always the downfall in these stories, you know? But when he drops the nitroglycerin, Nacho makes a point to pick it all up. And I think that's what tips Gus off. He's like, why would you worry about these fucking pills right now that have fallen in the dirt when your guy's dying?
Exactly.
You know, like, they make a point too, not all the pills fall out of the bottle. It's not like he needed one off the ground to survive, you know? Like, he made it was very apparent that, like, that's a weird thing to do when your guy is dying on the ground from something like this.
Yeah.
But the montage of Nacho trying to land, dropping the pills in the pocket,
goodness.
I love that, because to me that was Nacho 1,000,000% committing to his plan. He's like, you're going to use my dad to do this? All right, you're going to die. Here's how I'm doing it. Here's what I need to do to make sure you die. Like, there wasn't even a hesitation.
Well, he was already willing to kill Hector before this.
Yeah. And Tuco.
and Tuco. So I think this was, the straw that broke the camel's back. And I really do think Mike giving him these tips and stuff just speaks further to my point that there's some sort of fatherly bond between them. I think something about Nacho resonates with Mike about his son.
It's like Jesse Walt diet.
Yeah.
Like diet Heisenberg.
Pinkman.
And what's his name? No, before at the very first episode, Jesse's fucking shitty street name because he puts cayenne pepper in his mix. I can't remember what the hell it's called.
Oh my god.
Captain Crunch? Something like that? I can't remember what the hell it is. But yeah, that. It's like a mini version of that where it's like Mike's already out of the game, Nacho's just coming up in the game. And like, he's mentoring him on how to do this, and like, here's how I would do the plan. Like, here's something you probably forgot about because you're not thinking this through. Okay, Hector's dead. What about after Hector's dead? And that's how Mike gets, like I said in another episode too. Like, not a lot of old guys in this business. Like, you get to be old because you're smart. You don't get to be old because you're lucky. So Mike knows how this sort of hit, I guess, would go down normally, and tries to give him some advice so he doesn't screw it up royally. But that scene where he's sitting in the diner sweating it out, like, even, again, thinking to be like, I gotta make sure the air conditioner's broke so I'm not sweating my balls off in a fucking cold restaurant looking nervous. Like, you pointed that out to me. I was like, oh, that's why he did that.
Well, not only that, but so Hector would take his jacket off.
Yeah.
And it would be, because it's a lot easier to do it while it's on the chair, and that's how he practices it, than, while Hector's wearing it.
That to me was a really cool side story that happened in the last few episodes that was very enthralling. And they brought back Price, too, which is always funny to me.
Yeah.
I love that he comes in because he's just so lightweight in the criminal world, and he's like, Nacho wants like capsules for like $15,000, like they're not even worth that much. Will you come with me? And Mike immediately is like, something's up. Like, why? Why does he want this shit?
What's going on?
Yeah. And Price is just like, ooh, money. Like, and he's like, don't take this deal. I already took the deal. Like, you fucking idiot. Like, Mike would have known right away this is a dumb idea. I'm not going to associate with him anymore. But Price is dumb.
Yeah, after he robbed you.
Yeah, Price is dumb. I won't be surprised if Price eats it in the next season. He knows a lot that he doesn't realize he knows.
Yeah.
That just as him being reintroduced after like successfully bowing out earlier, I feel like he's going to bow out permanently.
And he also, even with Mike, he shares information freely, even in situations he probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
That's not a good quality to have in this business.
That fucking Hummer, I tell you. Oh, my God.
Oh, good God.
Shows up in that yellow and pink flamed Hummer. Fuck, man. Well, I think that's a fair recap of everything that happened in Season 3 of Better Call Saul. So, Nicole, who would you say was the most valuable person in this season? This was a tough one. I know we've only had a few so far, but this one to me, I went through the season thinking it was one person, and then while I was double checking my notes, I switched to a different person. So who do you think was the MVP this season?
I've had a really hard time choosing. I had kind of 3 contenders that were, most valuable to themselves.
It's like bronze, silver, and gold MVPs. Damn, girl.
Yeah, like I don't.
Well, who's your gold?
I think Nacho. It kind of is up in the air about what happens in the next season.
Yeah.
How does the last episode end? Because if Nacho, we kind of know how successful Nacho is. He isn't going to kill Hector. So that's why I was like, he does a lot for his family and for his motives this season. He gets shit done that needs to be done. My other contenders were Chuck and Gus.
Okay, interesting. Chuck being in there.
Well, so, Chuck does what he sets out to do. For a majority of the season, it doesn't turn out the way he wants it, but he wants to get Jimmy in trouble.
Yeah, disbarred.
Specifically,
the law is too important.
Yeah, he makes this recording. He has a plan with it, and it works flawlessly. He gets, till Jimmy coming into the house.
Yeah.
Like, up until the trial. Obviously, the trial doesn't go the way he wants.
Even 2/3 of the trial, I'd say, went the way he
Yeah.
wanted it to. Yeah.
Right up until the end. And he also made a ton of progress after that fact with his recovery. You know, he put in the work for that trial. He put in the work to set up Jimmy. And afterwards, even though he really hit a low point, he did put in the work to recover. And then in the last episode, when he's going completely crazy and just, you know, the lowest of the low, and at the end, it seems like he is, you know, he's trying to set a fire. Well, he's successful in that too.
Yeah, when he's like, I'm going to kick over the gas lantern that everyone's giving me shit about.
And
onto the papers that everyone's giving me shit about.
And, you know, when Chuck does a lot to keep the story going this season, you know, to keep Jimmy on his toes. As for Gus, you know, we see that he's this like mastermind puppet master that we've, you know, you have no idea about.
But he knows about you. And
Exactly.
He knows your ideas. No, I agree with you. On that one.
And then, you know, he being able to help Mike launder the money. So I felt like they were all really valuable in their own ways, and I really did have a hard time picking one that I wanted to be my MVP. Right up until us going into recording, I still hadn't decided, and I was like, hopefully somewhere during the podcast I'll figure it out.
So who is it then? Who'd you settle on, babe?
You know what? I think Chuck. I had the most to say about Chuck, and I think in his odd way, he was my MVP. As much as he's not my favorite.
You know, he had the most value to the season. I agree. Yeah. He did. He drove the plot the most valuable plot. So we'll start calling it that then. That'll be
most valuable plotter.
Yeah, something like that. See, and this is the first time we haven't agreed on this because mine, in a similar vein, is Nacho. Because going into it, I was like, man, Mike is just fucking dunking on people this season. I love it. And then that just it resonated with me so hard when it's just like, because he tries his best to respectfully get Hector to realize this is not going to work.
Yeah.
And Hector's like, nah,
you're dumb.
Fuck you.
You're dumb.
Yeah, like he's just being a dick. And like Nacho's like, no, like Nacho, the business side of Nacho realizes this isn't about business. You just want to fuck with Gus. And like you're going to get us all put in jail. And you're now making it about my family and my dad's legitimate business. You got to go. And that in my mind was the biggest decision made this season. Was Nacho being like, it's time for Hector to die. And being the one willing to do it. Because Mike wanted to kill Hector. Didn't do it. Gus said he wants to kill Hector. Hasn't done it. Nacho said he wants to kill Hector.
Getting it done.
Yeah. Immediately does that. And whether this is what puts Hector in the wheelchair or not, I feel like we're going to find out next season. It may just be a psycho to be like, because again, we're watching this years later where that ended, people were watching that live would be like, oh, that must be what happened to Hector. And then if the start of season 4, you know, a year and a bit later is Hector up walking around, that'd be a real like subversion of expectation. You know?
Exactly.
So I think it's not what's going to put him in the wheelchair, but it's definitely going to have an effect on the business dealings going forward because he's totally going to think Gus fucking did it.
Yeah.
100. He's not going to suspect Nacho at all. He's going to think Gus did it. He's going to be like, Gus switched the pills while we were in the office.
Or if he's suspicious at all, you know, if he doesn't realize it's not a medical thing, I could also see the cartel pulling him out of power. You're not fit.
Weak.
Yeah, you're weak. You can't do it.
You're an old man now, and you've shown that to us. Yeah, it could be.
It's also pretty interesting seeing the scenes in Mexico with that beautiful house that we've seen before.
I double-checked. That guy's name is Balsa.
Balsa.
Yeah, he's also in Breaking Bad, but I was close with Bulma. Or Bulva. Bulma is from Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
Balsa.
You're so cute.
Balsa is the fucking stereotypical mob leader who swims in a Speedo but wears a bunch of finger rings and has a hairy chest.
Yes.
That guy.
Whoosh.
Yeah, Balsa.
Yeah, you see this like luxurious life that he's leading. And I think, you know, Hector clearly wants to be in that role. He wants the house with the pool and not having to do the dirty gritty work that
Sit in
he's
the
still having to
restaurant.
do. And he kind of alluded to, like, we built that house, that should have been
Yeah.
me. So I kind of want to see more of that. I hope we get more flashbacks and details about that story next season.
It's already laying the groundwork, too, of how much power and how much control Gus has. Because in that scene, when they show up with their money for, like, the month or whatever they're supposed to be, and Gus has it vacuum sealed, like, in the identical bricks of, like, how much he's supposed to pay. And the guy's like, I want it like this from now on. That's not because he's trying to make it easy for his boss. That's how much money they're bringing in. And, like, weighing it that way is easier than counting it. Like, that's when you get to a certain point. But Hector's running with, like, rolled up elastic band wads of cash. Like, he makes Nacho count the money. Gus is bringing in so much more money, he doesn't have to count it. He weighs it. And the cartel still sees it as, man, this guy is organized. It's like, no, he's playing you already. Like,
Yeah.
You're already losing to Gus, and you don't even realize it yet.
And it's such a trump card, making Hector use his trucks to bring in his product, because it's instantly controlling how much Hector can bring in. And Gus is always going to bring in more. They play him right for the get-go. Oh, yeah, you can choose whichever one you want of these 5. And then he takes the 6th.
Yeah.
Really, that's not even a quarter of what they brought in the truck. Only one panel that they've popped up.
One panel. That was the craziest reveal, too. It was like, you're not even a blip on our radar at this level. And that's why I think it's also becoming a personal thing, because Gus would normally be like, this guy's costing me money. Let's just fucking kill him and be done with it, because that's what's good for the business. But he says to Mike, shooting him is too good for him. Like, we're not going to shoot Hector. We're going to kill Hector, but it's not going to be a nice, easy way.
Yeah.
It's going to be bad. So whatever Gus has in store for him, we obviously know does not come to fruition, but he has a plan for Hector to kill him.
Yeah, Gus definitely has a vicious
It's coming
interior,
out. Yeah. Well, we see that in Breaking Bad, but it's full blown. Where in this one, I've seen like that scene where he's interacting with, I think, the fire department, and he brings them food, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, you guys are like such heroes. Like, I'm happy just to help you out. We see him do that in Breaking Bad, but he sounds a lot more genuine. He's not as calculated in these statements as he is in the criminal world when he's calculated, And that's where it's more like Gus is a nice guy who deals with business that's really illegal in Better Call Saul. In Breaking Bad, Gus doesn't have fucking time for your screwing around and will kill you if you do it. Like he's in this, it seems like he's kind of like put a hat on being a rage-fueled monster in Better Call Saul, but in Breaking Bad, he's got to like tarp it down.
Yeah.
Because it's so volatile and it's so bad.
And it seems, I feel like Hector is going to push him to the breaking point.
Yeah,
because we've already seen him walk into the restaurant and really, draw a lot of negative attention.
Oh God, that scene was scary.
No
The
kidding.
employees, yeah.
And I could see him, you're risking my cover, you're risking my livelihood.
This is what
I'm not
built for
messing
the
around.
cartel.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I agree. So, MVPs, first time we haven't agreed on the person, but I hear where you're coming from with Chuck. I definitely hear you there. But as far as your favorite episode, which one really stuck out with you watching season 3 of Better Call Saul? Did you have one that really blew your mind?
I always have a hard time picking a favorite episode.
I know it's tough because some of them have a lot of development and others have similar development in places you don't expect. In stories that you're not necessarily invested in as much. I hear you on that. Would you like to hear mine?
Yes, I want to hear yours first.
I went with episode 6, Off-Brand. 3 simple reasons. It is when Nacho decides to kill Hector. He's tried doing it the other way.
Nacho.
He officially is like, all right, this is the route we're taking. You won't listen to me say don't use my father's business. You got to die, which I really respected. That's why he's my MVP. Jimmy officially wins his case against Chuck. Wins is in air quotes. Like he defeats Chuck. He doesn't give Chuck what he wanted. And that to me is a victory. And that's how Kim expresses it too. But the most important reason is because that is the episode that Saul Goodman is officially born. You know, like it's all these three official things that happen that are such huge moments for the characters that they happen to. And now we know Saul Goodman is originally an advertiser, an alias he uses for his, I'm sure, short-lived advertising company, and then he ends up turning that into his persona in Breaking Bad. So that was like our first taste of him living as Saul Goodman. And it's the mix of Jimmy trying to do business and make his way in the world, and Slippin' Jimmy willing to screw you over if you screw him over. And that is what I think encompasses who Saul Goodman is that we see in Breaking Bad.
That was a really good episode. And I like your point about the blend of Slippin' Jimmy and, Jimmy McGill
it's like
and Saul Goodman.
It's like the extreme left and right of his morals. That Saul Goodman is where he finds the niche. That's where he finds his middle of the road.
He knows he's never going to be happy in either extreme, but he can find a way to find some balance in the middle there.
So yeah, episode 6, Off-Brand, that was the one that I enjoyed most about season 3. Did that help you with your selection at all?
So I think my favorite episode is Witness. I know it's early in the season. It's where Jimmy falls into the, Chuck's trap. And I just thought that was a really powerful episode and really kind of set us up for the direction we were going in the season, where we were going to see people at their lowest point. Like that to me was kind of like Jimmy at one of the darkest points we've seen him so far. It's not like when he gave up on law and he still has this weird good spirit. He's hurt, he's upset, really emotional.
He's kicking in the door. That was really jarring to see too, was him literally putting boots to a door. It's like, whoa, this isn't the sly Jimmy we're used to seeing. He's just rage-filled right now.
And also, physically, I didn't think that he could actually do that.
He's got to call Mike.
And when you get to see this side of Chuck too, it really does show how deep and dark he's willing to go to fuck over Jimmy.
No, I saw that episode as rock bottom for both of them too.
Yeah,
I agree with you on that that's the extreme low for both Chuck and Jimmy.
Yeah, and I think that was a really powerful way to end the episode too. Like the whole series is just the way they open and close the seasons and the episodes is just like wow. And that one really, you needed some time to reflect afterwards, and just Howard coming out and being like, "Yeah, I am a witness."
Yeah, with the detective too there already, the PI.
Yeah, it was just. It was just like, how are you going to come back from this? How can you guys ever be close again after this? And I honestly don't know if we're going to get that.
No, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the end of their brotherly relationship. It did a good job setting the stage though, like all the players were in place. Season 3, episode 3, the next 7 are going to be meat, like it was like here, now we're jumping off into what's happening. So. Yeah. No, that was a very good episode. Before we wrap up, do you have any theories for episode 4? I know we left with Chuck kicking over the gas lantern onto a bunch of papers and starting a fire. I'm not sure where that's going to go. I think I mentioned how that's going to be a hospital trip for him. I think that's what's going to affect him in the long run. But past that, do you have any thoughts and theories?
Well, my big thought was like, is Chuck going to die? Is he going to escape from that? Because we also see him, it's not right before that, but while he was setting up for Jimmy, making sure everything was locked. It was kind of almost like obsessive the way he was making sure every door, every window was secure and locked. So there was no way that he could weasel out of saying it was a break-in. And I wonder if Chuck's
that's gonna get him.
That's gonna get him.
Oh man.
Well, and also the way it seemed really intentional. It was hard. You were kind of saying when that scene was happening at first, you were like, "Oh, he's having gas poisoning. Like there's a gas leak."
Yeah.
But there's no actual gas running to the house. He just has the gas-powered lanterns, and I think that's that sound we're hearing is the lantern, and that episode is called Lantern. Ooh, spooky. But it seems like the way he's rocking, he's intentionally trying to knock the lantern over to intentionally start a fire.
But see, I agree with you that I thought he was suffering from gas poisoning because that was the episode where he gouged all the holes in his walls, and I thought maybe he hit a pipe or something, right? And
That's
was
a good
be
point.
The reveal. But you're right, because it's almost like he's somebody who's like slowly coming to terms with, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. You know, like I don't want to kick the lamp over and like have it start all at once, but like, you know, I'm going to slowly nudge it over.
Yeah.
You know, like from that point, I can see where you're coming from.
So yeah, I don't know if this is the end of Chuck or not. I think either we're gonna see Chuck die or we're gonna see Chuck badly injured and
hospital ridden for sure.
Yeah.
Burns.
I could also see Jimmy coming to his rescue somehow.
At the actual house?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't. You know, for some reason he rushes over there, but.
Well, to that point, I wouldn't be surprised if it was his ex-wife.
That as well.
Because she's there. You know, they've placed her there that she's trying to see Chuck, and
yeah.
she can't.
I also, maybe more of a hope than a prediction, but I really want to see more of childhood Jimmy. You know, more about his coin collection and what really happened with his dad's till.
Oh, I'm sure we're going to get more of that in the next coming seasons.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for season 4, and I said this in the last one too, and I feel like if I just double down on it, it's more likely to happen. I want Howard Sr. I want to know the other H in HHM. I want him to come into the picture.
I feel like he's dead.
They haven't said that though,
I
feel like
but
that would be such an easy thing to be like. Before my father died, he wanted me to take. You know what I mean? Like something like that would have already come out in Howard talking to somebody if he was dead, and even then Chuck too being like he's mentioned once his father and him started this company. Like, why wouldn't he be like, and, you know, God rest his soul, we're going to keep the company or something
that's
like
true,
that. You know?
something like that.
And now that he's bought Chuck out of the company, I think that's when he's going to come back. Because they have 3 partners, and they just lost one of them, and they made a big stink about having to put 2 partners on one case.
Yeah.
So I feel like he's going to make his dad come out of retirement to work at the company again. Excuse me. On top of that, I'm not sure what's going to happen with Gus. I'm not sure what's going to happen with Hector. Totally... I'm at the whim of whatever the show decides to do. I do not have a theory on that. Like, I think Hector's going to obviously survive the heart attack or whatever. Whether or not it's something that takes away his ability to speak, I don't know. I don't think he's ever going to find out it's Nacho. I think Gus is going to find out it's Nacho.
Or if he knows it's Nacho, what's he going to do about it?
Yeah, he's either... I think
keep ringing that bell, buddy.
Yeah, is it going to be a similar situation with Mike where he's like, stop trying to kill him? Or is he going to be like, you know what, if it's time to fucking kill him, we're going to do it?
I also think there's going to be a cool little story behind how he has that bell. Like, I don't think that'll be right from the get-go how he communicates, you know? Like, that'll be...
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be an ends to a mean.
Yeah.
Like, where it's like, we can't understand what the fuck you're saying. Or like, you blink too much or something, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's going to be something like that. There's a lot still on the line for Season 4. And in my minimal research, Season 5 comes out this year. So there is another unreleased season that's got to come out. So that kind of, you know, colors our commentary on it a little bit. There's, you know, the story's not ending after the next season we saw. We know that. We don't know what the next season's going to have, though, because we haven't watched it yet. That's a big reason why we're finishing this up now, so we can actually continue to watch the show, because it's so good.
But probably all of our questions won't be answered.
But hopefully some of them will.
I also really want Kim to find some happiness next season. Like, I don't want her to just, you know, keep hurting herself and working too much and kind of turning a blind eye to Jimmy's bullshit.
Some resolution.
She needs some resolution,
I
and
agree.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to find out in the next few episodes, Season 4, Better Call Saul. If you are enjoying this podcast and want to watch along, by all means, give her. They're 10 episodes, about 45 minutes each, so You can divvy them up. You can watch them in all one go. Binge watching is also a thing nowadays, so won't be surprised if you do it that way.
Just don't fall asleep and wake up and
Yeah.
see some of the new season.
Yeah, you got to keep tabs on that. So thanks again for joining us. I am Bobby.
I'm Nicole.
And this has been episode 3, season 3, Better Call Saul.
Season veterans.
Season veterans. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll talk to
Stay
you next
happy.
time.